Humanity had always looked at the sky with a mix of hope and fear. For centuries, people wondered if someone out there was watching or waiting. When the first real signal finally came from deep space, it felt like the answer to a dream the world had held for generations. Every nation paused. News channels turned silent for a moment before bursting with excitement. People stepped out of their homes and stared at the stars, knowing everything was about to change. It wasn't a movie anymore. It was real. After long preparation, Earth sent its first representatives to meet the Galactic Council. This council was a huge network of different species spread across thousands of systems. They had laws, rules, and traditions older than human history. They were advanced, peaceful, and organized. Humanity wanted nothing more than to join them, to stand shoulder to shoulder with beings from across the galaxy. The first meeting took place inside, a giant station floating like a silver moon. When the human delegation arrived, they expected fear, curiosity, maybe even respect. After all, Earth had taken only a few hundred years to move from basic flight to advanced space travel. Most species took thousands, but the room fell quiet when the humans entered. Dozens of eyes, glowing, blinking, shifting, or rotating, stared at them. The expressions were not welcoming. They looked uncertain, maybe cautious. Some even stepped back as if they were unsure if they should be near humans at all. The council began its evaluation. They asked long questions about human behavior, history, culture, and conflicts. They brought up old wars, disasters, and the rapid pace at which humans built new technologies. They talked about Earth's unpredictable nature, its ambition, and its stubbornness. They talked about how humans never settled for limits and always pushed further. The humans answered politely. They explained mistakes, progress, and dreams. They talked about unity, hope, and the desire to learn from the wider galaxy. For a moment, it looked like things might go well. But then came the final session. The leader of the council stood up. Its voice echoed across the chamber. It was calm, but there was no kindness in it. It explained the decision slowly, as if trying not to upset anyone. After reviewing everything, the council had reached one conclusion. Humanity was not ready. They said humans were too emotional, too reactive, too unpredictable. They believed humans changed too fast, adapted too fast, and made decisions that could affect other worlds in ways no one could predict. They used the word unstable. They used the word dangerous. And finally, they used the word unfit. Then came the final line, spoken without hesitation. Earth is denied membership in the Galactic Council. The room fell silent. The humans stood still, unable to speak for a moment. They had traveled across light years to be judged by strangers who had never lived a day on Earth, yet thought they understood everything about humanity. It felt unfair. It felt insulting. It felt like someone had looked at all of humanity's struggle, pain, progress, and hope, and dismissed it with one sentence. The human representatives kept their composure. They thanked the council, even though their voices shook. They walked out without making a scene because they knew one wrong reaction would only prove the council's point. But deep inside, something cracked. It was not just disappointment. It was something heavier, a mix of embarrassment and anger. When the news reached Earth, the reaction was explosive. People around the world felt the rejection like a personal insult. They talked about unfair treatment, about how no species was perfect. They pointed out the council didn't look at human art, human kindness, human creativity, or the ability to rebuild after mistakes. They only looked at the dark side. Some people demanded that Earth try again. Some said humanity should stay away from the council forever. Some argued that humans didn't need permission to explore the galaxy. Others felt crushed, wondering if maybe the council was right. But while the world argued, a small group of leaders, scientists, and strategists gathered in secret. These were people who didn't believe in loud speeches or protests. They believed in solutions. They believed in strength. They believed in quiet preparation. They knew that if humanity depended on the council, it would always stay under someone else's judgment. They met in underground bases, secure bunkers, silent offices, and hidden research centers. They spoke softly, carefully, and always with purpose. The meetings lasted long nights and sometimes stretched into early mornings. Little by little, a plan took shape. It wasn't a plan of revenge or attack. It was a plan of independence. They called it a new direction for humanity. The group agreed on one point. Humans would no longer wait for approval. If the galaxy didn't want them, fine. They would walk another path, one the council wouldn't expect. Humanity had always been adaptable, always been quick thinkers, and always turned challenges into opportunities. This rejection would be no different. The plan had 3 steps. First, they would silence all open communication with the council. If the council believed humans were emotional and unstable, then showing no reaction would confuse them. Quiet was more powerful than anger. Second, humanity would hide its true advancements. The world would present itself as calm and peaceful, with progress slowing down. But behind this peaceful mask, scientists would develop new technologies that didn't exist anywhere else. Third, humans would spread into space quietly, leaving no trace. Not to attack, not to conquer, but to build something new, something the council couldn't see or control. When this idea was presented to select global leaders, many were shocked. Some even hesitated. But the more they thought about the council's rejection, the more they understood. Humanity needed freedom. Humanity needed space. Humanity needed to stop asking for a seat at someone else's table and start building their own. The world changed slowly after that. Nothing happened overnight, but the signs were there if someone looked closely. Secret budgets started moving. Unknown materials were shipped to remote locations. Strange lights flickered underground in mountains and deserts. New research centers appeared on small islands and deep inside caves. People working in these places were told only what they needed to know, nothing more. Advanced ships were designed ships faster, quieter, and smarter than anything Earth had built before. Machines were created to hide signals, erase heat signatures, and mask entire star systems. Engineers experimented with drives that bent light and devices that confused long-range scanners. Every invention was built with one purpose: invisibility. The public saw none of this. They only saw peaceful speeches, calm news reports, and gentle promises that Earth would continue exploring space at a safe and steady pace. Most people believed it. Some suspected something deeper, but they had no proof. Only a few knew the truth. Humanity was stepping into the shadows, not out of fear, but out of focus. They were no longer trying to join a galaxy that doubted them. They were preparing to explore it on their own terms. They were preparing to move without permission, build without judgment, and grow without limits. It was strange, almost ironic. The council rejected humanity because they believed humans were too ambitious. But that rejection only made humanity more ambitious than before. They believed humans were too adaptable. But humans adapted faster than the council could imagine. They believed humans were unpredictable. And now, humans were becoming exactly that: unpredictable, unseen, and unstoppable. The first phase was almost complete. Earth was going quiet. The galaxy would soon believe humanity had accepted the decision, slowed down, and moved on. But in truth, something far greater was taking shape beneath the surface. Humanity was beginning the first steps of a long journey. A journey that would not follow the lighted roads the council created. A journey built in silence. A journey that would one day change the galaxy in ways no one expected. And it all started with a single rejection. When humanity stopped answering the Galactic Council's calls, the galaxy thought Earth was simply disappointed and had moved on. To outsiders, everything looked quiet. Too quiet. But the silence was the plan. The silence was the first wall between Earth and the rest of the galaxy. The world's public communication channels changed slowly. Official messages became shorter. Earth's diplomats sent polite replies with no emotion, no curiosity. When the council invited human representatives to attend minor gatherings or cultural meetings, they declined with simple and harmless excuses. They said Earth needed time to focus on internal matters. They said humanity was re-evaluating its priorities. Everything sounded calm, reasonable, and harmless. What the galaxy didn't see was what was happening behind closed doors. Underground cities that had been abandoned for decades lit up again. Old air filters hummed back to life. Massive doors that had not been opened since old emergencies slid aside. Workers in plain uniforms entered with boxes of equipment, tools, and sealed containers. These places had been hidden even from Earth's own citizens, originally built for earlier generations' emergencies. Now they had a new purpose. In mountain ranges, desert regions, and deep oceans, new research zones appeared. Not public buildings with flags and signs. These were quiet structures with no windows and no identification marks. Only those with special clearance could enter. Inside, teams worked day and night. Engineers drew designs on transparent boards. Scientists studied materials that had been discovered during early space probes but never fully understood. Programmers developed new systems that could hide entire fleets from detection. One of the biggest achievements was the development of a propulsion system that ran almost silently. Instead of bright flares and obvious energy emissions, this new drive left nearly no trace. A ship using it could move through space like a shadow sliding across a dark room. Even the Council's strongest scanners would struggle to notice it. Every discovery, every improvement, every test was part of a long plan. Humanity was not slowing down. They were accelerating in a direction no one else could see. Meanwhile, Earth began reshaping its public image. News reports talked about budget cuts in space projects. Interviews with officials mentioned slowing down exploration until Earth had more political stability. Journalists wrote articles saying Earth would focus more on solving problems at home rather than chasing distant stars. The galaxy saw these reports and believed the story. Earth looked like it had lost interest in grand ambitions. It looked like humanity was stepping back and becoming quiet again. It looked harmless. And because of that image, the Council relaxed. They believed the rejection had worked. They believed humans, emotional as they were, went home to cool off. No one suspected the truth. Far from Earth, on hidden asteroids that had been hollowed out, the first secret colonies were built. These were not large cities with beautiful towers and parks. These were functional, focused places designed for work, preparation, and learning. They had living quarters, labs, training halls, and assembly lines. The people there knew they were part of something bigger, something the world would not understand for many years. In these quiet colonies, humanity set up their first off-world factories. They created metals and alloys far stronger than anything used before. They learned how to use old alien ruins, remnants of long-dead civilizations, to power new machines. Everything learned was copied, stored, and shipped in secure containers that traveled through space unseen. The workers lived simple lives. There was no luxury, no fancy entertainment. But there was purpose. There was pride. They knew they were helping build a future that did not depend on approval. They knew they were building security for the entire human race. Closer to home, Earth changed its transport systems. Spaceports were redesigned to have hidden layers underground where ships could land quietly. The top layer showed small civilian crafts, nothing unusual. But beneath the surface, massive hangars held the shadow fleet. The public saw only what they were meant to see. As for the council, their view of Earth became blurry. Their scanners could not detect anything unusual. Their reports on human activity became shorter and shorter. Soon they barely checked Earth at all. They believed humanity was harmless now, a world licking its wounds after rejection. The council's analysts gave presentations that said Earth had stepped away from large-scale development. They declared humanity stabilized. Some even praised Earth for being calm and peaceful. But there was something the council did not understand. Humanity was at its most powerful when underestimated. Quiet did not mean weak. Calm did not mean slow. Silence did not mean surrender. In reality, Earth was becoming a different kind of world. Not a loud superpower waving flags. Not a desperate species begging for recognition. But a thinker, a planner, a shadow. When Earth released a statement saying their space program would be temporarily paused for restructuring, many aliens saw it as a final sign that humans had accepted their place. No one noticed that during this pause, dozens of cargo ships took off from hidden runways late at night, carrying materials to secret locations. These cargo ships were specially modified. They had dark hulls that absorbed light and engines that emitted almost nothing detectable. They traveled through routes that were not marked on any map. Sometimes they flew so close to asteroids that they almost touched them, using the rocks to hide their movement. Other times they drifted slowly in the shadow of a planet's rings until they reached deeper space. And while the galaxy saw humanity fading into quietness, Earth was building what many planets only dreamed of: independence. In one underground hall, a small group of leaders looked at a giant holographic display showing a map of known space. Most of the galaxy was covered in bright lines showing council territories. But there were also areas with no markings, empty, forgotten, or ignored by the main powers. These unclaimed places were exactly what humanity wanted. They chose to build in the spaces no one cared about. They chose to work in the cracks of the galaxy's structure, where no one looked because no one expected anything important there. The more the council ignored them, the more freedom humanity had. One of the leaders said something simple: "We will move in places where light does not reach." Another answered, "And we will grow so quietly that when they see us again, they will not believe what we built." That day, the final outline of their long-term plan was approved. Earth would vanish from the galaxy's focus, not by disappearing physically, but by becoming invisible politically and strategically. The council thought Earth was resting, but Earth was preparing. The council thought humans were discouraged, but humans were awakening. The council thought humanity had accepted the rejection, but humanity was creating something new. The transformation became clearer each year. Earth's official space activities looked slow and small, but human shadow projects grew rapidly. New shadow stations were built on the edges of asteroid belts. New research teams discovered ways to hide entire communication networks inside natural cosmic noise. New fleets were tested that could fly for months without anyone knowing they existed. People who worked in these programs learned to speak softly, move with purpose, and never leave records. They didn't brag. They didn't show off. They didn't leak anything. Every person understood that one wrong word could put everything at risk. Earth was building a new identity, one the galaxy wasn't ready to face. And somewhere in that silence, somewhere in the untouched corners of deep space, the first seeds of the Shadow Empire were planted. Not an empire of rulers, but an empire of survival. An empire built by people who refused to be defined by rejection. The galaxy had decided humanity was not ready. Humanity answered by becoming something the galaxy had never seen before. The first shadow ships left Earth without any ceremony. There were no crowds, no cameras, no speeches. The launches happened on quiet nights, far from cities, under skies where clouds moved slowly across the stars. Each ship rose with almost no sound, their engines so faint that even birds did not react. These ships carried people who understood they might not return for many years. But they were ready. They were driven by something bigger than fear or comfort. They were driven by purpose. Once they were far enough from Earth, the ships activated their light-bending systems. Their hulls shimmered softly for a moment, then became invisible. From that point on, they were shadows traveling through space. No scanner could trace them. No patrol ship could follow them. They became silent travelers, moving through dark regions between stars. Their first missions were simple: find abandoned places in space and study them. The galaxy was full of forgotten things. Old battles had left behind broken machines, empty stations, and drifting metal giants that no one cared about anymore. Some planets had been deserted long ago. Other worlds held ruins of civilizations that had vanished before the Council even existed. While most species ignored these places, humanity saw opportunity. When the first Shadow Fleet arrived at a long-dead mining world, the landing team stepped onto the dusty surface with careful steps. The wind there moved slowly, carrying grains of red sand across open plains. The buildings were ancient, their walls cracked and half buried. Huge machines stood like frozen creatures, rusted and silent. But inside those ruins were metals and materials that Earth had never seen. The team collected everything they could. Taking samples back to the ship dot, it became clear quickly. There were treasures hidden across the galaxy that no one else bothered to pick up. And because no one watched humanity's movements, these treasures were theirs for the taking. Each new location offered something different. One place held old energy cores that still pulsed with faint power. Another had map records showing routes through dark regions no one used anymore. On a moon orbiting a gas giant, they found tall towers filled with ancient data symbols. The symbols were complex, but humanity had always been good at puzzles. With patience and teamwork, they decoded them and learned new techniques for storing energy. Everything discovered was either brought back or replicated in newly built shadow workshops. In these hidden workshops, engineers worked without distraction. They didn't need to worry about politics or approval. They were free to create, to experiment, to push boundaries. If something failed, they tried again. If something worked, it became part of the growing knowledge base of the Shadow Empire. Meanwhile, back in the hidden colonies, people were building something new every day. Long halls filled with humming machines created parts for silent engines. Rooms lit with soft blue light stored small black cubes energy modules, far stronger than anything Earth had used before. In another area, workers stitched together panels made from materials found on forgotten alien ships. Everything was used. Nothing was wasted. Life in the colonies was simple but hopeful. There were gardens under artificial sunlight and small classrooms where children learned not only math and science, but also why they were living out there. Teachers explained the truth gently. They told children that the galaxy did not understand humans, but that didn't mean humanity would stop growing. They taught them that sometimes the world says no, not because you are wrong, but because the world is not ready for your path. These lessons shaped the next generation kids who would grow up already knowing they belonged to something bigger than Earth alone. The Shadow Empire didn't look like an empire. There were no kings, no thrones, no loud symbols. It was a network of people who trusted each other deeply. People from different countries, languages, and cultures worked side by side. They didn't need flags to feel united. Their unity came from their mission. The colonies connected through hidden channels that bounced signals across asteroid belts, black hole shadows, and cosmic dust fields. These channels were nearly impossible to trace. Messages moved quietly, like whispers inside a dark forest. Every signal carried information, new discoveries, updated plans, requests for tools, scientific results. The network grew faster every year, until dozens of secret bases were linked together. One of the most important breakthroughs happened when a research group tested a new scanning system based on vibrations instead of light. Traditional scanners used waves that bounced off objects. This system used a different idea. It listened to the small ripples caused when objects move through space. The concept was similar to how humans feel footsteps through the floor, even when they don't see the person walking. With this new method, the shadow fleets could detect things long before being detected themselves. It allowed them to navigate dangerous regions with almost zero risk. As the fleets continued exploring, they found more abandoned megastructures. One incredible discovery was a ring-shaped station orbiting a dim star. The station was enormous, so large it could have housed millions in its prime. But now it was silent. When the landing crew stepped inside, their flashlights lit hallways coated with golden dust. The walls held patterns that looked like memories carved into metal. It was a place where time had stopped, yet inside its core, they found something valuable, a chamber where materials were recycled using a process unknown to modern species. The humans studied it carefully. They copied the design, modified it, and soon the shadow colonies had their own advanced recycling centers. Waste became a resource. Nothing was thrown away anymore. Each new discovery made the Shadow Empire stronger. It wasn't just about building technology. It was about building confidence. Each success told humanity that they didn't need approval. They didn't need permission. They didn't need to be accepted by those who feared them. The people inside the colonies changed too. They became calmer, more focused. They learned to think long-term. They didn't panic when things got hard, because they had seen the beauty of slow progress. They had learned patience, but even though humanity was growing quietly, the galaxy was not completely blind. Rumors started to spread across distant systems. Some patrol ships reported strange readings. Their scanners picked up small distortions in space that looked like something passing by. But when they tried to follow, they found nothing. A few shipping companies complained that their cargo routes felt strangely calm, almost too safe. For years, pirates had been a problem in those areas. But suddenly, the pirates were gone. No one knew why. On some planets, explorers said they found signs that someone had visited abandoned worlds recently. But the footprints were unusual. They didn't match any known species. They were lighter, more careful, almost like whoever walked there wanted to leave as little trace as possible. All these small mysteries made the Council uneasy, but no one connected the clues. They thought these were unrelated events. They thought deep space was simply acting strange. No one even considered the possibility that a silent, hidden human network was responsible for every unexplained event. Meanwhile, inside a large chamber in one of the shadow colonies, a group of senior leaders gathered around a wide table. A holographic projection of the growing Shadow Empire hovered above them. Dozens of dots marked the locations of hidden bases, colonies, research labs, and mining outposts. Lines between them looked like a web stretching across the dark corners of the galaxy. The leaders spoke quietly, discussing the future. They talked about expanding into deeper space. They talked about new technologies that could make entire fleets invisible, even when landing. They talked about training more people for deep space missions. But one thought remained, constant in all their minds. Everything must remain hidden. The time would come when humanity would reveal itself again. But that time was not today. Today was for building outside. Large shadow ships floated above the colony, their hulls dark and sleek. They moved slowly, almost gliding. No lights, no markings. Just silent figures against the endless night of space that the people working on them felt a mix of pride and responsibility. They knew that these ships carried humanity's future. They knew that when these ships traveled, they were not just exploring, they were shaping the galaxy quietly. The Shadow Empire had no anthem, no public face, no open celebration. But it was real. It was growing. It was united. And every day, humanity grew stronger without anyone noticing. The Council believed they had rejected humanity. But instead, they had pushed humanity into a place where no limits existed. And in those hidden corners of the galaxy, a civilization was rising that would one day change everything. Across the galaxy, strange stories began spreading like quiet whispers. None of them were loud enough to raise alarms, but all of them carried a strange pattern. Something was moving in the dark, something no one could see. At first, people thought these were nothing more than rumors created by bored traders or overworked patrol crews. But slowly, the whispers turned into questions, and the questions turned into worry. It started when a merchant ship reported that a dangerous pirate group had suddenly disappeared. This group had been a problem for years. They blocked trade routes, stole cargo, and sometimes trapped smaller ships. The Council had tried to deal with them many times but failed. So when the merchant ship sent a message saying the pirates were gone, the Council assumed they had simply moved somewhere else. But then the same thing happened in another region. A different pirate band vanished without a trace. No debris, no distress signals, no recorded battles. They were simply not there anymore. Some alien pilots joked that ghosts were cleaning the galaxy. Others said maybe an old species had returned. But none of the theories made sense. Later, a patrol ship detected a faint ripple while moving through an empty sector. It wasn't a visual object or a heat signature. It was more like a slight disturbance in the environment, as if space had been brushed by something that didn't want to be seen. The patrol logged it as a minor sensor glitch. But deep inside the crew, they felt something was there. Across the stars, more reports came in. Cargo fleets felt watched for a moment, then felt nothing. Explorers found footprints on an abandoned moon, but the footprints didn't match any known species. Survey teams found missing equipment on old ruins, nothing important. Just small tools or data pieces, but they were sure those ruins had been untouched for years. At first, the Council didn't pay attention. They had bigger problems, political disagreements, and border disputes. Small events like this were considered unimportant. But after months of similar stories, a quiet worry grew among certain officials. Something was happening, something hidden. One night, in a council meeting room lit by soft white lights, a group of analysts presented a report. They showed maps of areas where strange incidents had occurred. They explained how several pirate groups had vanished and how trade routes had become unusually safe. They pointed out that unexplained activity often happened in zones no major species cared about. One analyst said, "It's almost like someone is cleaning the galaxy from the shadows." Another analyst added, "But whoever it is, they don't want to be noticed. They leave no messages, no warnings, no claims." The council members shifted in their chairs. They didn't like mysteries. They preferred clear problems with clear rules. But this situation had none. When one official suggested sending scout ships to investigate, another quickly refused, saying the council had no reason to waste resources on rumors. So the issue was pushed aside. That decision would later be remembered as the moment the galaxy chose ignorance over caution. Meanwhile, the people living in the shadow colonies continued their work. They were aware of the rumors spreading outside, but they didn't let it distract them. They were building something important, and silence was their strongest shield. They knew that if the galaxy ever truly understood how much humanity had grown, everything would change far too soon. Inside one of the shadow stations, a team gathered around a display showing recent activity from nearby alien systems. They read the reports of patrols sensing disturbances. They saw news about missing pirate fleets. Some even laughed softly, knowing they were the quiet cause behind all those mysteries. They weren't proud in an arrogant way. They were proud because they were helping people who didn't even know they needed help. Many pirates were dangerous and hurt innocent travelers. The shadow fleets removed them with careful planning. They didn't destroy everything. They disabled engines, collected useful materials, and cleared paths so that ordinary citizens could travel safely. In many ways, the shadow fleets were becoming protectors without ever announcing it. But not everyone outside the colonies welcomed the strange calmness. On certain planets, leaders became uneasy. They asked why the galaxy suddenly felt quieter. They wondered why their scanners sometimes picked up faint echoes of something large passing nearby. Even though nothing was visible, the feeling was there. Some started to fear an unseen enemy. Others believed it was a lost empire waking up. A few even blamed the council for hiding something. Fear made their imaginations wild. And then one day, an exploration team sent a message that shook their government. They had found signs of recent construction on an old asteroid station. Fresh metal panels, updated wiring, even footprints on the dusty floor. But the strange part was that the construction looked very organized, clean, and efficient. It didn't match any alien style they knew. The team leader's message said, "Whoever worked here wasn't careless. They didn't leave a single tool behind. But we can tell someone was here. Someone skillful." Their government demanded answers from the council. But the council had none. As tensions grew, a small, nervous group of alien nobles decided they wanted to know what was really happening near Earth. They believed that humanity, once loud and curious, had gone too silent. They thought maybe Earth was hiding something, or maybe something had happened to humans entirely. So they sent a tiny scout ship on a covert mission. The crew's job was simple: move near Earth's region, scan quietly, and report back. They weren't expecting danger. They thought Earth was quiet and harmless. But when they approached the outer edges of the solar system, their scanners acted strangely. They detected nothing unusual: no fleets, no ships, no activity. But the silence was too perfect. Their instruments picked up no scattered signals, no energy trails, nothing. It was as if the space around Earth had been wiped clean. One of the crew whispered, "This feels wrong. No planet is this silent. Nothing in nature is this perfect." They scanned again, focusing on Earth's orbit, expecting satellites or stations. But their display showed a calm, empty region with only a few common signals. The crew grew uneasy. Something was off. Earth looked normal, but too normal, like someone had erased every sign of space activity. They didn't know the truth. The shadow fleets had technology that could make entire structures invisible to outside scanners. Stations, energy sources, and ships were cloaked behind layers of distortion. To outsiders, it looked like emptiness. But in reality, humans were there, watching silently, making sure no one got too close. As the scout ship turned around to leave, one crew member said, "Either Earth has become incredibly peaceful, or someone has hidden everything on purpose." Back in council space, officials were confused by the scouts' report. They didn't know how to interpret it. Some argued Earth must have shut down all operations. Others believed the scouts' equipment was faulty. A few suggested humans were planning something. But no one reached a clear conclusion. Soon, more stories flowed into the council chambers. Explorers in one system reported that a giant derelict ship had been moved from its original location without any signs of machines doing the work. In another system, an ancient artifact had been removed from a temple and replaced with a harmless stone. No one understood why. Some said it was theft. Others said it was protection. Even more unsettling, a few alien governments sent quiet messages asking if the council knew about a hidden species traveling through the dark. They didn't accuse anyone openly, But the fear in their words was clear. The council finally called for a serious meeting. They gathered in a tall chamber with high ceilings and soft blue lighting. Their voices rose, their arguments grew heated, and the uncertainty made them uneasy. For the first time in many years, they felt like they were not in control. One official suggested that the galaxy might be dealing with an unknown threat. Another said that perhaps a once powerful race had returned. Someone else whispered that maybe a dangerous species had evolved in secret, but no one said the word humans. They all thought humanity was still resting, still quiet, still licking the wounds of rejection. They had no idea that the very species they dismissed was now shaping the galaxy from the shadows. And, while the council debated endlessly, humanity continued to grow stronger in silence. The Shadow Empire didn't seek attention. They didn't show their full strength. They didn't want unnecessary conflict. But they were always ready, always watching, always preparing. The galaxy had begun to notice something was wrong, but the truth was far beyond what they imagined. Humanity was no longer a species the galaxy could ignore. They had become something else, something quiet, powerful, and everywhere. The outer edges of the solar system were always quiet. Out there, light was thin, signals were weak, and everything felt slow. But on that day, the silence broke. Strange movements appeared far beyond the orbit of the last planet. They were too organized to be natural, and too large to be simple space rocks. Someone was coming. Someone who did not belong there. For years, the galaxy believed Earth was harmless, maybe even fading away after being rejected by the Council. So a group of distant worlds formed a small alliance, thinking they could gain something from Earth's absence. They assumed humans had given up their dreams and stayed trapped on their home world. The alliance wanted resources, territory, and a shortcut into a quiet part of space. They told themselves Earth would be an easy target. They told themselves the stories they heard were myths, but they did not know that humanity had spent those quiet years working in silence, building strength in places no one could see. They did not know about the fleets hidden under layers of shadow tech, or about the outposts working in complete silence. They did not know that humans were no longer just a planet-bound species, but a people spread across dark corners of space, watching everything with careful patience. So when the Alliance finally entered the solar system, they expected an empty world. Their ships glided forward with clean lines and flashing lights. It looked like a celebration rather than an attack. They did not even raise shields. Why would they? To them, Earth was unguarded. Inside those ships, the crews were relaxed. Some were curious. Some were greedy. Some thought they would be welcomed as rulers. Some expected no resistance at all. They followed their plan with confidence, unaware that every step they took was being watched by thousands of eyes. Silent alarms triggered deep within the Shadow Empire's hidden network. No sound was heard. No panic was shown. But signals raced across invisible channels, not far from Earth. Hidden behind a thick cloud of magnetic dust, human ships slowly awakened. Their hulls were dark and smooth, absorbing every bit of light. To any outside observer, these vessels were not even objects. They were emptiness shaped into purpose. And as they prepared themselves, an old message was quietly passed through the network. It was something every shadow pilot knew by heart. It was a promise spoken long before their ships ever launched. We do not start fights, but we do not let threats reach our home. Deep inside the largest human command vessel, calm voices moved through the control room. There were no loud alarms, no shouting, no fear. The officers were focused, steady, and prepared. They already knew what the Alliance wanted. They had seen this pattern before. When someone thinks a world is weak, the greedy ones arrive first. They never ask. They never observe. They assume they can walk in. But humans were no longer the same species that once asked for a seat in the Galactic Council. The rejection changed them. The silence had sharpened them. And the Shadow Empire knew exactly how to respond. The human fleet began to move as one. Not fast, not aggressive. Just steady, controlled, and quiet. They stayed invisible as they passed through the dark regions of space. Their engines did not leave trails. Their signals did not ping on scanners. It almost looked like the shadows were shifting. The Alliance ships, still unaware, continued their path toward Earth. Some of their crew members started talking about how they would divide the planet's oceans. Others wondered who would take control of the moon. One of them even joked about turning Earth into a training ground. They had no idea that the moment they crossed a certain invisible boundary, thousands of hidden sensors tagged every one of them. The human commander gave a single instruction. It was simple but absolute. Reveal. In an instant, the emptiness around the Alliance fleet changed. Small distortions appeared first, like heat waves bending light. Then shapes became visible. Sharp edges. Metallic forms. Hundreds of large vessels. A heartbeat later, even more silhouettes formed behind them. Then even more above, and below the Shadow Fleet decloaked completely. The Alliance ships froze. Their scanners lit up with hundreds of alerts. They could not understand how so many massive vessels had been invisible moments before. Panic spread. Orders clashed. Some tried to back away. Others tried to raise shields. But the human ships did not move forward. They simply stood there, blocking every path like silent guardians. The Alliance commander demanded an explanation, but the reply came in a calm and steady voice from the human flagship. This is restricted space. Leave immediately. The words were simple. Not angry, not threatening, just direct. But the message carried a weight strong enough to shake every mind that heard it. The Alliance crew had prepared for an easy victory. They had not prepared for a fleet that looked like it stepped out of a nightmare. Still, a few Alliance captains believed they could test the humans. They tried to activate weapons. The moment they did, every one of their targeting systems shut down. Their engines stalled. Lights dimmed. Their control panels flickered. The Shadow Empire did not fire a single shot. They simply used silent technology to shut down the enemy systems without causing harm. One Alliance pilot whispered, "This is not possible." But it was. Humanity had spent years studying, learning, and developing secrets in the dark. The galaxy had underestimated them, thinking silence meant weakness. They did not know silence can also mean preparation. The human fleet moved slightly, not aggressive, but enough to show that escape was possible only through cooperation. A path opened for the Alliance ships. A quiet corridor in space that led away from the solar system. The message came again, softer this time. Leave peacefully. The Alliance ships did not argue. One by one, they followed the open path. The crews inside them could feel the shadows of the human fleet watching, waiting, ready to act if anything changed. But the Shadow Empire did not pursue. They did not punish. Humanity's goal was protection, not conquest. When the Alliance finally exited the system, the human ships faded back into darkness. One by one, they disappeared, blending into the void. The solar system returned to silence, as if nothing had happened. But every Alliance member on those ships knew something important. They had seen something the wider galaxy did not believe existed. In the following days, rumors spread fast. First in whispers, then in official reports. Some called the humans ghosts. Some called them guardians. Some called them an empire that grew in silence. The Galactic Council also heard the rumors, but they struggled to accept them. They had rejected Earth once, believing humans would fade away. Now they did not know what to think. But humanity did not seek approval anymore. They did not want a place in anyone else's system. They had built their own path, their own rules, and their own future. Inside the hidden human capital deep in space, leaders met to discuss the event. Their voices were steady, but there was a quiet pride in the room. The system had been protected without violence. The message had been delivered without aggression. And most importantly, the people of Earth were safe. One of the senior leaders spoke calmly. They thought we were alone. They thought we were weak. They did not understand we grew stronger in the quiet. Another answered, "We do not need the galaxy's permission to exist." And it was true. Humanity had learned to grow without applause. They had learned to build without recognition. They had learned to survive without support. And because of that, they had become something the galaxy had never seen before, a force that did not rule through fear, but through patience, preparation, and unity. As time passed, more explorers from the Shadow Empire continued to map regions of space no one had touched. They discovered new materials, hidden star systems, and strange ancient ruins. Every discovery strengthened them. Every quiet success pushed them further ahead. But Earth never forgot its goal. It was not about revenge or proving superiority. It was about having the right to exist freely, without judgment or interference. The rejection from the Council had hurt once, but now it no longer held power. The humans had changed the meaning of that event. They took rejection and turned it into growth. They took silence and turned it into progress. They took shadows and turned them into strength. And one day, when the galaxy finally looked toward the dark regions and wondered who ruled those hidden lanes of space, they would hear the truth. You denied us a place in your galaxy, so we built our own. The Shadow Empire did not need a spotlight. It did not need applause. It simply continued forward, steady and unshaken, ready for whatever the universe would bring next. Humanity had stepped into the shadows once, but now the shadows belonged to them.